Hi, good morning. Hi, everybody. I'm Man, and today I'm very excited that I have my wonderful friend and therapist for many years, Jaz Govan, very experienced therapist that's based in Chiang Mai, and I'll let Jaz do a little introduction of herself. Over to you, Jaz.
Thank you. I'm also very excited to be helping you launch this amazing project, Marn. Very briefly, my background is I'm a very highly sensitive person. I was born that way. And somehow along the line, I got the idea that was not okay. So I would hear comments from my parents and relatives that I wasn't okay as I was. Oh, she's different. She's not like the others. She's shy. She's this, she's that. And all of these messages gave me the idea that I wasn't what people wanted.
Mm.
And many of us get that. And so because I felt that those parts of myself weren't appropriate, weren't wanted, I dumbed them down. But what I did take in was the pain of the criticisms and the judgments that I perceived. And because of that, I experienced a great deal of trauma in my life, emotional suppression of my emotions, and that led me to be hospitalized, and it also led me through 2 failed marriages and lots of other stuff. And so it became apparent that I needed to unravel that ball of string. And what I did was, when I came out of the hospital, I started to work on myself. And in 2002, I actually became a professional therapist because I understood enough about my own journey and being able to help others. And so what I am doing is I am helping people to access all those negative, seemingly negative things that happened to them, that were said to them. They might be real, we might have imagined them or elaborated on them, but they're all little arrows of pain that have hit us that we've held onto, and they become wounded parts of ourselves, and they're in our subconscious, and they're operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it is my passion to help people find those injured parts of themselves and to heal them, to bring them into where we are now with the information that we have about ourselves, so that we can become more complete and whole. And that is the work that I do, and that is why I do it.
I think that the best therapist, in my experience of like having had different experiences with therapy, is the best therapists often are the people who have experienced it and have healed themselves, because it's not a theory anymore, it's actually what really works for people. Um, so do you think that addicts or people who have addiction problems have a more severe case of running away from pain? What do you think of addiction?
Running away from pain, I don't like that, because that makes us feel like we're deficient. What I would say, that many addicts, and we're all addicted to something, aren't we? It just shows up bigger in some people than others.
Mm-hmm.
That many addicts are also incredibly highly sensitive people, and they will have difficulty dealing with some aspects of their life. And so we don't become an addict the first time we have a drug. What we're doing when we're using substances of any kind, whether it's food, drugs, alcohol, whatever, is we are numbing the pain of what has been happening in the past.
Mhm.
And that will go back. That will go back probably before the age of 7, but it will definitely go back into childhood. So I think all addicts are very sensitive beings, and what they're doing is, or what we are doing is, we're numbing the pain of that to try to make ourselves feel normal, whatever that is. And if you are a highly sensitive person, please don't put yourself down and don't want to be normal, because you're not. You're super special because of your sensitivity. But we need to get in touch with that and to be safe with that. And then we don't have to numb that or dumb that down.
I mean, it's quite interesting. Like now, when I'm in the public transport, everybody's addicted to their phones. You know, nobody, it's incredible. Like, I mean, if it used to be that if you're an addict only if you're addicted to alcohol or drugs or smoking or something very normal, but now I see like everybody is addicted. You know, I mean, and I don't know what it is. Like maybe it makes their journey a little bit less painful. You know.
So I would say, what does that do? It takes you out of your body.
Right.
It takes you away from the perceived pain or suffering. And then, of course, it becomes a compulsion. So, I mean, there is that addictive behavior to it. But why do we do it? That is the big question. Not what are we doing? Why are we doing that? Why isn't it pleasant to be in our bodies?
Mm-hmm. Why?
And again, you know, when we talk about the compulsion of the phone and addictions, then there isn't anybody that isn't addicted to criticizing themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pushing ourselves, do more, be more, get this. That all that stuff is it is an addiction to finding fault. What if we could all be okay exactly as we are? Because there is no perfect person, thank God. There's no perfect way of being. We're all individuals, but society, our conditioning has told us that we need to be like this. We need to achieve that. And they try and stream us into manufactured beings, robots, instead of letting us being our amazing selves and be curious and expansive about being different.
I was listening to a talk from an Indian guru who said, when we were in our mother's womb, not even when we were born, you know, we were just in a state of no tension, you know, like everything is just peaceful and protected and safe. And then the minute we come out, here it comes, you know, all the fear and survival and struggle, and then on top of that, what we have to be in order to be okay.
And what I would add to that is that, especially in the last 3 months that we're in the womb, that third trimester, we are experiencing everything that our mother is experiencing.
Right.
So if our mother is having a stressful situation, having pressure put on her, or is freaking out about even having a baby, which to me is something to freak out about, is that the unborn baby is going to be feeling that. How can they not? So in my work, when I go back into the subconscious, many, 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 many times, we get taken back to the womb when the unborn child is experiencing their mother's emotions, and they download those and they come out with those as their own beginning of their model of the world.
Right. So it's almost like most of us walk around with some kind of trauma, you know. And I mean, there's a word that's often used in the world of therapy, and it's the inner child, right? We talk a lot about the inner child, and the wounding of the inner child. You know, it's quite interesting that we have two. I can get quite confused about two different views on that. One is that people would think that you need to push yourself. You know, you need to toughen up. You need to become stronger as a person, and not think of yourself as a child or as a wounded child. And then there's another thinking is that you need to be kind and you need to treat yourself like a baby and you need to nurture and love your inner child and be in touch with that. What do you think of these two different views? Do we need to toughen up or do we need to become like, you know?
We need to be accepting of how we are. And within that, I think we have is to allow ourselves to be everything, to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. The strength in being vulnerable, you know, if you think about Gandhi, they could throw stones at him, they could beat him up, you know, and he stayed humble and vulnerable and nobody could hurt him. How much strength is that? That's real strength. I think there's a difference between power and strength and pushing and that over macho way of being. The real strength is being okay with how you are more and more in every moment. And that's true strength and power, because people can't take that away from you. If it's about pushing and shoving and wanting more, that can easily be destroyed on the outside. So being at peace with all parts of yourself, the soft, the strong, is the key to personal success. And when the inside is healing and healed, then that will manifest in the outside world as miracles, magic, and all the good stuff in life.
So why is it so difficult to accept oneself? Right? I mean, I understand that, you know, I mean, I'm not perfect. I understand that I have flaws and, you know, I have my insanity, but, you know, why is it so difficult to say, you know, and that's okay, you know? Why is it that we have to go like, you're not okay?
You know, that's a question we could talk for the next 3 weeks about that. But you know, it's the question is it's the conditioning. In my work, I work with beliefs, limiting beliefs, programs,
Right.
responses, and behavior patterns.
Right.
I don't work with the positive ones, but I work with all the negative ones, and we just get this bombarded at us wherever we go. You know, if you don't have this deodorant, you know, you're not going to get the right man. If you don't look like this, you're not going to get into university. If you don't study this, the whole of society leans towards negativity and what's not working. So we're hyper vigilant. What we want is the best for ourselves, but we're more vigilant about what could go wrong. And so what we get is more of what can go wrong, because that's where our focus is. So all these programs, responses, and behavior patterns are all given to us by our parents to keep us safe,
Right.
by school to keep us moving forward. And nobody gives a penny halfpenny about what makes us happy.
Yeah, right. I don't think they even know what makes them happy. So, you know.
Man, just think about in my work, age 2 and 3 comes up a lot. And why? Age 2 and 3 is when we're at our most curious. We don't have fear. We want to know everything. Even if we're highly sensitive, we're curious and we're touching things and we're finding out. But what happens is our parents say, no, don't. Be careful. If you do this, that's going to happen. So our model of the world becomes like, oh, it's scary out there. I shouldn't be doing these things. And also, if you recognize that we don't achieve, our brain is not sufficiently developed until we're about 6 or 7 to make logical decisions. All we are doing at age 2 or 3 is responding to the vibrations of what our parents and the world around us says. And we don't have the logic to understand that they just might be doing that to keep us safe. We just hear, no, don't, stop, be careful. What's that going to do to you if you've heard that like 5,000 times?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a friend who was made a mistake yesterday and called me crying, because that he made a mistake, and I remember, like, when I was young, if I made a mistake, it was like, it wasn't acceptable. We're not
Exactly.
encouraged to say, okay,
Yes.
we're humans, we make mistakes, that's what happens, like, you made a mistake, so what, and a lot of I think the beating up of myself, or the not being accepting of me being a human being with flaws that make mistakes, comes from there, comes from that kind of conditioning. In school, like, if I didn't do what my teacher wanted me to do, I got punished. I came from.
So let me ask you a question, Man. So what would be possible for you if you would allow yourself to be flawed?
I think I would have a lot less tension, a lot less tension. It's like, okay, I'm a human being. Wow. I mean, that's a revelation,
And I'm flawed. Oh, wow.
Right? That sometimes I'm late. Sometimes I forget the appointment. Sometimes and not have to be like, I never make mistakes. I mean, who never makes mistakes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, we forgive our friends for making mistakes, for being flawed, but we don't forgive ourselves because we're programmed that way. And so your friend who you spoke with yesterday was freaking out because of something that just happened, but that will have gone back throughout the whole of their lives to these ages, probably around about 2 and 3, and maybe even before, when this stuff was downloaded and
Yeah.
careful, don't do it, stop.
And it was interesting because my first instinct was to write, don't cry, and then I stopped myself, right? I mean, that's the programming, and I stopped myself and said, it's great to cry, it's very healing to cry, and even that in our society is like, if something terrible happens, people tell you, I hope you feel better, I hope you stop crying. You're not allowed to say, okay, I'm sad.
Crying is an emotion. Crying is a release. Crying is great. But again, conditioning is a judgment. Oh, you're weak.
Right. How dare you be weak?
Yeah. Why would we be given the ability to cry if it wasn't useful? Why would we be given the ability to get angry if it's not useful?
Yeah, right.
Anger is so close to passion, but don't angry. Better shut that down. When you shut down anger, it didn't go away. It's just bubbling away inside. What could we do to stop that? Well, we could take drugs, couldn't we? We could get drunk.
Yeah.
We could numb that. It's like, oh, now I feel better. You might feel better, but it's like a band-aid because that anger or that emotion is still there. You just dumbed it down for a while.
Yes.
Better to get to the situation that happened and release that, and then the anger really isn't there. You don't need to dumb it down.
Yes, I mean, it's quite interesting that, you know, we have this, like, these are the positive emotions and these are the negative emotions, and these negative emotions are not allowed. Like, you know, if you're angry person, it's like so bad, right? I've been told that, you know, you're angry person. I'm like, yeah, I am, you know. I'm also very passionate, you know. So, and that's a form of anger too, you know.
The only thing with anger is, you know, the only problem about having anger is holding on to it. That is what destructs. But having anger is brilliant when it's used in the right way for the right reasons.
Right. Especially as women as well. You know, I see it as maybe also racial, like Asian women as well. Everybody's been brought up like you can't be angry, you know, you can't be an angry and cute, demure, gentle girl at the same time, you know. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to be, you know, when I was growing up, you're not allowed to be angry, you're not allowed to be critical, you're not allowed to be too smart, you know. So yeah, you're seen as a witch, you know. You're a witch if you're angry, you know. This is quite interesting. So
Yes.
I want to ask you then, what do you think is the difference between your unique system? Maybe you can give us a little idea of what your unique system is versus the typical talk therapy. I mean, I've been through both, so I know the difference. But I think it would be nice for people to understand from your point of view.
Thank you.
Mm.
So, with the work that I do, I am able to bypass the conscious mind that thinks it's got the answers and thinks that knows what's wrong. And I am able to get into the subconscious programming, responses, and behavior patterns
Mm-hmm.
that are creating your perceived problem.
Mm.
So we can bypass the conscious mind. The work that I do is it's work of self-discovery also. So I'm not a smart aleck therapist that's telling you what's wrong with you. I am helping you to go to where that wounded part of you is, to find it and to explore what happened through the system that I've used or the systems that I've created, and release that. So not only do you get the physical release of the events that created the perceived problem, you also get the intelligence for your mind of what happened and why you've been behaving the way you have. So I think we give too much attention to what we think, but I also do believe that when the mind gets something, then it's like, okay, I get that. Now healing can happen even more. If I just shifted the energy of something and you had no intelligence about what that is, how would that help you recover from whatever it is that you're suppressing or using? We need to respect all parts of ourselves. So my work works with the emotions, it works with the physical, it works with the mental, and it allows you to see yourself differently than you've ever seen before. One of the gifts that I experience when working with addicts is that by the time they choose to take action with their addiction, they already believe that they're a bad person.
Mm.
Okay, and they believe it's because they're taking drugs or alcohol. What the system I work with shows them that that stuff was in place way before they knew about this way of numbing their pain.
Mm.
And so they can start to understand, let's say, like, wow, I'm not a bad person. That happened, and that happened when I was 3 or 5 or 7. wow, and they can start to really care about that part of themselves rather than dumbing it down or hating it.
Right, right. And I think what's useful both in one of the main things is the bypassing of the conscious mind. I think that's very powerful, because the a lot of our real programming is in the subconscious. It's like opening of the door. It's the same programming, like I'm a bad person, from that level, and no matter how much I talk about it in a very conscious way, it doesn't go away. That's one in my experience. And the second one is the physical part, that a lot of the tension and the stress and the pain is stored in the body. It's in the cellular memory in the body. It's not just mental difficulties. So I mean, I through yoga, through a lot of body work and what you do, I think it really helps in letting go of stuff. It's not just an intellectual exercise, it's true.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I do think that when we understand ourselves, or we understand the impact of negative programming, then we understand that we are not our programming. We think we are until we start unraveling it, but we are still that, pure heart, soul, love. We are that. It's just got dumbed down, covered up with all the conditioning of everything that we just talked about. So starting to unravel that is a journey that allows us to wake up to who we are and why we're here. And that is, most people, or many, many people, don't know why they're here. And what do? They come here to achieve more, to get more, to be more. And they come and they live in this vibration of survival. And some survive very, very well. But all the time you're in survival, you're wanting something more, or you're needing something more. When you are at peace with yourself, you're living in a vibration of thriving, where you already have everything. And when you feel that on the inside, then guess what? It shows up on the outside. And I practice living in thriving. And the miracles and opportunities that show up for me are quite extraordinary. And it's just by recognizing, releasing the past, which isn't me, and connecting to what I already am. There's nowhere to go. We've already got it.
Interesting. So what is the process that's needed in the inner child healing work with you?
I created 2 ways of doing this, and they're both based on a system I called fast track technique. And it is a journey of discovery, again, bypassing the conscious mind. Or if somebody knows, say specifically, they had a horrendous time at age 7, then we can work with that wounded child part of themselves. And I take them through a process of looking at various pictures that they connect to deeply. So if you think about it, Man, we see in pictures, don't we?
Yeah.
Something traumatic. We see it, and we see it the way we see it. Nobody else might see it that way, but if it's traumatic for us, we see it. And that trauma gets remembered exactly as that at that age. And as you've just mentioned, it gets remembered at a cellular level in our body, and that starts the programming. When I take somebody through this process, they will connect to various cards, and that internal picture that they have remembered that now has emotions attached to it. When their internal picture matches with an external picture, then healing starts to happen. There is an acceptance and an acknowledgement, and then we can release the physical vibration of those pictures, and people will feel that in the body, and then we can reprogram them with something of how they do want to feel that will benefit them. One of the things to mention about my work is it sounds like I'm going back into the past. I am, but I'm not going back into the stories. I'm going back into what happened so we can kick that out, so you can have more of what you want now. So with many therapies, there's a lot of talking about, this happened and that happened, and the client will talk about the situations. And that in many, many ways can actually reaffirm them.
Yes.
So I don't do that. We go back. In fact, one of my jobs is to try and help the client not talk about the past, but we have to go back to the past to find out where did it happen before we can let it go. And so it's very, very thorough. If somebody said, oh, well, that happened to me when I was 12, it could be the case, but it might have started earlier on at age 7. So I like to get to the root of where this stuff happened. And that means I have to go back into the past, but it's not about repeating the story or regurgitating the negative feelings about that. It's about finding out, where is it, where did it happen, and what can we let go of, and we let that go and replace it with something that is beneficial for them.
Yeah, I mean, someone once asked me a really interesting question that about addiction, that what if somebody doesn't want to be free? They want to stay stuck, and they want to stay stuck in the addiction or in the past, because it gives them an excuse to be in the addiction, right? It's like, this happened to me, I was sexually assaulted or whatever, and therefore I am an addict. It's a good excuse. I mean, in that way. So someone asked me that, like, so what if they don't want to be free, And my answer was that nobody can want you to be free for you. You have to want it. You have to want to be free. You want to climb out of the hole, you have to want it.
This is a great question, because yes, if somebody really wants to stay as an addict or whatever, then great. So they will be deriving some benefit from that. But if somebody comes and asks for help, then those people want to change. I'm not saying it's going to be easy for everybody, but there is something called secondary gain. And that's that there is a benefit from staying as you are. And that will make you sabotage yourself and this kind of stuff. With my work, we go into all of that. So secondary gain will show up as something that you have. It isn't who you are, it's your programming. And so if somebody really wants to change, if they do want to change, then, but they're finding it difficult or keep falling off the wagon, then it will be because they do have secondary gain. And when we know they've got secondary gain, we can release the programming of that so that the change becomes easier for them. But as you say, if somebody doesn't want to change, then great, just put your focus on somebody that does.
Yeah, because I think people who don't want to change mostly is because they feel safe in that known space. It's like, I'm used to this. I've done this for 50 years. I can't change. It's too late. But it's not true. I know people who come into recovery for addiction in their 60s. After like 40 years of cocaine addiction. Like really, and the change is amazing. It's like within a year or two, you see the difference. It's better late than never. It's very true.
And I also believe, Man, that people who have long-term addictions or long-term anythings, is they will get a wake-up call. There will be something that happens to them and it's like, whoa, now I'm ready. So is never give up. When people are ready to change, they'll come to you, they'll find your website, they'll find people like me, they will start asking for help. And it's also my belief that we find, when we ask for help, the right person will show up. And so my work is, I call it fast track technique. I call it, and the other side of that is magical you, is I'm not the right person for everybody, but the right people will find me because they're the ones that want to go straight like an arrow.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't want this messing around stuff.
Yes, that's how I found you. Yeah, no, because when I came into recovery, I just felt like I didn't have time. I didn't have time to like mess around and go back and forth. And, you know, I wanted the truth and I needed it fast, you know, because I didn't have the time to be in misery and then go back. You know, that people, a lot of people relapse for years and years and years, you know, and before they know it, they're old, and then they're still struggling with the same problem. And I just didn't want to go there, you know. I didn't.
I think also, Man, and there is no what's the word, negativity around this, is that when recovering addicts, or when addicts hang out with addicts or recovering addicts, they can get caught in this very dangerous place of the beliefs of,
Right.
you know, how it's difficult, this and this kind of stuff. So I don't mean to be negative about this, but I come from a completely different place.
Yes, yes.
About this, where everything is possible. And, you know, and yes, you have this addiction, but, you know, so what? So what?
Yes.
Is to get the part of you that wants to survive and thrive, move into thriving, is to work with that part. And when that part expands out, well, guess what? The negative starts to disappear because we're not feeding that story.
Yes, it's almost a blessing, you know. It's like a signal, you know. I think with addiction recovery, it's the universe or God or whoever you believe says, this is what I'm going to use to wake you up, you know, to wake you up to that you need to do this work on yourself. You know, so and that's just the beginning, right? It's like I find that very true. I mean, like what you said, you need to have a wake up call. Something has to happen, you know, to
And like with you, Man, you know, is look what's happened to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like you had to do this addiction thing. You had to go through everything that you went through until you got to the point where it's like, okay, I've had enough. And then when you started to wake up to yourself, you start to experience all these other things. And now you teach yoga and now you're helping others. You couldn't do that without that backstory.
Right.
But you're not letting that backstory now define you.
Yes.
You used it to a point where it's, okay, I'm done with that. And now this is who I am. And this is why I can help you.
Yes, because I think that a big part of addiction is the shame, you know, the shame of being who you are, and not being the perfect being that, you know, success story that everybody thinks that, you know, is how we are defined. And I kind of want to break that, you know. I want to break that shame, you know, that something is wrong with you if you have an addiction. I mean, everybody, like you say, everybody has an addiction. Everybody's an addict. You know, it's just whether it's painful enough for you to have to be forced to go through the birthing canal to come out as a new person, you know. And I think it's a lot of courage to actually face the problem. and want to be free. I think it takes a lot of courage, and not many people, you know, have that. Like looking at yourself seems to be the hardest thing in the world, you know. Interesting, right? Everything else seems to be easier than to say, let's look at what's going on, you know, all my false beliefs, all my programming. And you raise a very good point about having a different perspective, because when you're constantly regurgitating the same problem, you know, and then it becomes another belief, you know, it becomes another belief. Now I'm an addict, you know.
It's another excuse.
Right, right, right. Or not even just an excuse. It becomes your identity, you know. Right? And then now you're like, now you're never gonna recover, and I don't believe that, you know. We were not born addicts, you know. Nobody is born in. So I mean, why do I have to be labeled now when I was free, when I was born? You know?
So I think it's very important for all of us to know that we chose to come on this planet, and we didn't choose to come on this planet to suffer. We came here to change the planet, but it takes us. I was way over 50 years old before I had any clue that I had any purpose. I even had an opinion on this planet. I just thought, oh, life happens and you just roll with it. And it was only when I discovered the pain and suffering that I was carrying and started to unravel that piece of string that I started to understand that I did have a purpose, that my life was worth something, and I'd come here for a reason. It took me quite a number of years to understand how to work with that, but now I have. And it's like, so my life is very, very fulfilling, because in a way I've come full circle, and I am a highly sensitive person, but that now is my gift rather than my problem.
Right, right, right. So I think we're very, very fortunate to have you today, and I'm really looking forward to having you as part of Let's Recover. I think there's a lot of I've benefited for many years from your help, and I think what really was very helpful for me wasn't just sessions with you, was that throughout, like, non-session times, you know, you were always there, you know, you always cared, like you always replied to my emails, and you know, like all the time. And so I really appreciate that so much. It's a huge support, you know, and we need that support when we are doing that kind of work, you know.
That's lovely to hear that.
Yeah, and you're always very positive as well, you know. Like sometimes my experience with some therapists is that because it's the same with my parents. It's like they care, but they care to keep you safe. They will say, oh, you probably shouldn't do this or that, you know. But you were always very positive and very encouraging, and I really appreciate that. I need that. Thank you so much. Thank you. So do you have anything else you want to add before we conclude?
I believe that we come here to have a full experience. We didn't come here just to have fun. We came to experience a whole spectrum. To bring all of that together into a fabulous gift of self-acceptance. And along that way, we find our purpose and our reason for being, and how we're here to help others change, and how we're here to change the planet. I believe, Man, that I was born, you were born, everybody on this planet was born exactly when they were supposed to be here right now in this most important time of change with COVID and all this stuff that's going on. It's like when you think about that, we've got 75 trillion cells of consciousness. How can that be a mistake? And we chose to bring all of that right here, to talk like this today, to change the planet, to change people's lives. And that's how special each one of us are, not just me, you, and everybody else on this planet. So when we start to be curious about that, about ourselves, that is real recovery.
Right. And I mean, I think, like you said, especially at this time especially when before even last year when it was really, really bad, I feel like it's really a calling to have a healing force rather than the predominant force of like money, power, status, and fighting and wars, and it's a very different way that is manifesting, I think, from like in the 60s when it was like a lot of rioting, we're just chatting now, rioting. Whereas now it's a very real kind of healing, and there's a force of people who are real healers that are slowly changing the humanity, and the focus on being self-centered and narcissistic and wanting only what's good for them and not what might be helpful to humanity as a whole. It's quite interesting to look at that. I mean, it will take a long time, I think, but it's slow.
It's happening. It's happening now. It's happening for me. If it's happening for me, it's happening for everybody. It's just for us to open up and allow ourselves to have that experience. And I think people like you, people like me, we are leading the way for that to happen.
Great. Let's end here on a good note. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.